We're here. We're live. We're working. Let's start that intro.
Why? Why is it like this? The haters should be loved, we invited. You don't agree, then you're the problem that we're fighting. Open up your mind, stand up, become righteous. Why? Why is it like this?
Welcome back to another episode 25. Oh. We have had an insane week. And thank you to anyone. I suppose we start with the Halloween episode just because I'm raving off of it still. I've spent so long editing it, and you guys are loving it. You're pointing out things that I didn't even notice while doing it, which I'm kind of thankful of because I had enough like walking away from the computer while editing this because I was just freaked out.
The orb.
The orb. I didn't notice the orb, but now I want to go back through all the footage and look for orbs.
Yes. Watching it, but then I was like, I was watching it with Anna and Rush, and I think Lou by then as well. Yeah. I think my brain was like, well, surely there wasn't because Steph would have seen it. Or do you get what I mean? It was that kind of like, I just didn't really think anything of it. But as soon as I saw the comment, I was like, right, I know I've definitely seen something.
I know it for sure. There were so many things that happened, and there was so much more footage, by the way, that I just didn't end up using. I was struggling to fully put it together. I just wanted to make something short, something little to try and like show people that we can do something different.
Introduce you to these scenes.
Definitely. There was a few problems with audio in some parts, so apologies for that. But if you turn it up loud enough, you will hear all of it. But yeah, lessons learned for next time, and I'm excited to do the new one.
It's very, very funky, like very cinematic. That's what I was enjoying.
And I'm glad you said that.
Well,
that was what I was trying.
I feel like Steph unleashed her creativity on this video, and there's definitely a signature within that video where it's like, yeah, I can see you kind of really flexing all of those new skills and being like, I'm creating something there.
I really enjoyed doing it. And like I've learned these like softwares literally in the last year. But does anyone notice my spelling error? I learned last night at the age of 31 that tail, T-A-I-L, and T-A-L-E are two different words.
You didn't know that? Sweet, but I didn't notice it. I obviously wasn't paying attention to that part.
I've tried to change as much as I can, and every so often I'll like go back and watch it and be like, oh, it says it there as well. And it's just like, so hopefully it's one of the things that the hacks where people will go comment like, that's not spelt right. Just have to go, thank you for the comment. That will help my algorithm.
And the thing is, I think I know these differences, and yet the amount of times I reread my work and I've used the wrong word, and I'm like, have I really written that? And it is just a word finding thing. It's a common thing with ADHD is making those mistakes, and not because you're sloppy. It's just because your brain decides to just insert here. Like, okay, cheers for that.
Oh, that's spelled differently. That's a tail as in
but
a tail. Never mind. But yeah, so
we love this new learning though. We're here for new learning all of the time. I'm always learning new things. Can't think of anything off the top of my head right now. I'll share.
I'm here just to prove to you that you don't have to be perfect. I'm here proving myself that I don't have to be perfect.
No, but I think that is such a good point, because if we all waited to be perfect before we did anything, we would never do anything because we're never going to be perfect. I shared something 100%. Yesterday. It was the last day of ADHD Awareness Month yesterday. And last year we did a huge campaign sharing every single day. This year, none of that. But that doesn't mean we're doing nothing. But it was just like a different approach to it. And yeah, I shared something last night basically just saying if everyone was aware of themselves, if we were all working on ourselves, regardless, ADHD people do that a lot because we're told to. You know, we're told we've got all these flaws and these faults, so we have to work on ourselves.
Try harder.
Yeah, but if everybody did that, we'd reduce a lot of the stresses anyway. You know, so, and the point I'm making is none of us are going to be perfect ever. And the more aware you are of that fact,
accepting of it,
the less you'll put that expectation on other people, because
100%.
You'll understand it's okay to not be perfect and nobody else is perfect. And that's the beauty of being human.
And if you're struggling to work out if you are a perfectionist or not, or if you're highly judging of yourself, try and reflect on how often you judge others. Because that is often, it's so easy to pick up on stuff that annoys you about other people when you do it yourself.
when I catch myself having those little judgy thoughts or reactions or triggering, I immediately think, what was it about that scenario that relates to me? That's because it's a huge indicator, use it type thing.
100%.
You'll think, oh, it's because I feel a bit rotten about that, so that's why I'd. But yeah, I think use it. Don't be ashamed of having those thoughts. We all do it.
Exactly. Just acknowledge that they're there and don't let it impact you or anyone else.
Mm.
Oh, we're starting off early with some life lessons.
Some good old ranting.
Can't spell, but God, I can help you with your life. I promise. Just don't ask me how to spell tail. We've done some other cool stuff this week. Day of the Flamingo was on Sunday.
Yeah, Sunday afternoon.
Wow. Shout out to you girls. So yeah, Sunday afternoon, 1 till 5, we went to a party. We went to a disco, a rave.
Yeah.
And with zero alcohol. We've been running a theme through this year that's been helped by your
abstinence.
Your abstinence.
But that implies that I've gone without, and I certainly don't feel like I've gone without. So choice.
Without the fun, you mean? Not gone without alcohol. You've definitely gone without alcohol.
Yeah.
Just in case anyone thought.
Without by choosing alcohol. Do you get what I mean? Abstinence is like you really want to do it, but you're not going to.
100%.
It
was really good to I'd been to the festival, the community festival, which is where we met Flamingo AF. You've been following them for a little bit before that, hadn't you? Following their journey.
Yeah,
Lily and Steph. Yeah, Lily and Steph, you're both amazing. They are great girls. If you are interested in trying alcohol-free lifestyle, honestly, follow Flamingo AF on Instagram. They've got a great support group. The party, oh my God, it was amazing. I've said this to everyone that I spoke to, but normally when you go out clubbing, partying or whatever, the bar is full. You cannot, it's 4 people deep on a heavy night and you just I'm never going to get a drink. The bar was empty. If you want a drink, you go straight up. There's no alcohol, but everyone was on the dance floor. And normally when there's drinks going, it's not till the end of the night till the dance floor is pumping, and it did not stop. The girls, Elements Girl Band, incredible. All 4 of them. There was a singer, a drummer, a DJ, and a saxophone player. And all 4 of these girls did not stop the entire time. I don't know if you've ever seen someone jump about, play a saxophone, and still jump in between the parts that she's not. Yeah. And look perfect, look good. And there's no such thing as perfect, but maybe this party was the closest thing to perfection you can experience. They were all just amazing and gave us the best night. And
best night. It was literally an afternoon rave, but it felt like we'd been dropped into a party, and then on a Saturday night or whatever, I was getting distracted. So I was just thinking about how by the time we left, we were so happy and high on life, weren't we? It's so true that those endorphins, the rush, I've been saying this for the last few months, that when I don't drink on a night out, I still feel drunk. And that party, it was so obvious. Everybody is just glassy eyed and having this great time, and it's a natural high.
Good time doesn't come from you drinking. The good time comes from the community, from the having fun. You think you need this drink to be able to bring down that barrier,
and
it might feel like that is.
I think if everybody was sober, it is a bit more encouraging, isn't it?
Definitely. And there's also, not everyone there. I think to understand everyone there as a recovering alcoholic is a little bit naive. I think there's a lot of people that are just interested in seeing what a life is like. A lot of our culture is surrounded by drinking. If you go to a wedding, if you go on holiday, if you go to, if you go somewhere and everyone else is drinking, that social pressure alone to, I might as well have a drink then, even if it's 11 a.m. It's easy to kind of conform with these things. So taking a step back and being no, life doesn't have to be that horrible. I don't have to wake up with a hangover. Yeah. I don't have to be struggling to get a bus or a taxi for stupid amounts of money late at night. If you can go to a party and end at 5 p.m. There was one lady we met in the toilets, and I was loving her wig the whole time. She had this pink and purpley orange wig. Yeah. And she was I'm going for a Sunday dinner after this.
That as well.
It was amazing. It's because you can do that. And I thought, God, you can get home, you can
do whatever you want.
Exactly. Ready for work the next day.
Yeah, there was so many pros. I mean, there was so many going through my head now, but the one that I'm sticking with is I've partied drunk with drunk people, and also this year I've partied a lot sober with drunk people. I've partied in every scenario, but
To the party.
and now I've partied a few times sober with sober people, and that is the best. And do you know why? Because nobody's like banging into you and going and being like rowdy or aggressive. Yeah. There's no drinks being slopped everywhere all over you. Everybody's maintaining this level of like, aren't we having a good time? Because they're there for a good time. It just was friendlier. It was less disrespectful. The one thing I have noticed being sober this year is that 2 or 3 drinks in, the tone of how everybody talks to each other changes.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh, we're talking to each other like that now, are we? Because you've had a few beers.
We see it as like drinking allows you to socialize. Drinking allows you to like not necessarily socialize in the best way. It might bring down your walls, but that allows you to then confront everything. Get crappy with people. It's just like, yeah,
take things the wrong way. Get confused about what somebody was actually saying and not allow them to explain because you're in a rage all of a sudden.
How many times do you go to like a really nice event, you know, maybe a family wedding or a do, and it ends in catastrophe because multiple people have been drinking and multiple people can't work out what's right from wrong in this moment. Everyone's just, and like you say, the next morning they can forget about it and apologize to each other, or maybe not apologize, just come together and act like it didn't happen. But if you're sat in all that while not drinking,
what are you all doing?
Why are you doing this to yourself?
But this partying Sunday was such a vibe. Before that, at Slam Dunk Festival, for example, I liked it, but I was on edge because people were drunk and smashing into me and having no regard for that whatsoever and just being just horrible, basically. But I'm pretty sure these people weren't horrible if they weren't like off their heads. So 100%. For me, this whole experience, I'm like, oh my God. But on the other hand, I'm never ever going to preach to anybody else because the more I have the conversations with people, people are genuinely suffering with their self-esteem, with all sorts of things. And having a drink then allows them to express themselves, allows them to get involved, allows them to take part in something that otherwise they wouldn't. So it's like finding that, okay, you need another solution. You know what I mean?
That's why, I encourage you to find a much healthier, more self-soothing way to build up that self-esteem that you need to be able to socialize.
But Flamingo AF make everything fun. So it's like, there was, we were kind of like a bit, when you arrive, we arrived late, so we missed the kind of intro and stuff anyway. So we did arrive to a full-on party.
We were stuck in traffic for God knows how long.
But great being in fancy dress in traffic.
But why are they looking at us? Oh yeah, our faces are painted. It's like, what? What's he looking at? Oh yeah.
Staring at me.
I look nuts.
But so at first we were a bit like, oh God, you know, a sober rave, like around the edges almost. But then we just found ourselves literally in the middle of it, like yeah, loving life, driving home on an absolute high. I'm sure the high is still lasted to today, and this is why we're both popping, you know, today.
Loving life. Literally, since I've been so busy with this editing and with that, I allowed myself a little break to go and enjoy this party. And I haven't really had a chance to like say thank you to the people that helped us with the video shoot, with the ghost stuff. Contacting Lily and Steph, I've been meaning to get in contact with them as well. Like, there's so many people. I'm just going to make a generalized dedicated to everyone that I've not, you know, let's go back years. Erin, I'm sorry I've not messaged you in years. Peggy, I got a comment saying, well, thanks I wasn't invited to the witch thing. I'm sorry, I should have invited you to that. Like, I'm so sorry, everyone. I just don't get back to people.
To be honest, I'd thought the same about the witch thing. I thought there's going to be quite a lot of my mates that will see that go out and be like, where was my invite? And I'm like, oh, I just didn't think, like, it. You know, sometimes we're just as whisked away with the flow as we are.
You know how much was actually planned for that night and didn't actually go down just because forget the plan. Forget the plan. So yeah, thank you to everyone with the Halloween thing, but also to everyone at the Flamingo AF. You've been like following us, liking the reels, and we made good friends, didn't we? It was good. It was like a little mini community all over again, which again we mentioned has been like tarnished a little bit. So.
Yeah, but it was really powerful actually, because there was definitely this overwhelming sense of we've made a choice to do this, and it was almost like people were stepping outside the comfort zone. They were challenging themselves, and they were almost dancing as like a whoop whoop, I'm doing this. It was like a real celebration, wasn't it?
It was really good. Speaking to some people that are like, I've been waiting for this all month. It clearly is like, do you?
Wait,
It's very, that community in Flamingo AF are very valuable to them. So thank you, girls, for and well done for setting up the community you have. It's brilliant. So
yeah. Oh, we did the answers up for the quiz.
I haven't even got them on the thing now. We'll do them at the end. The quiz.
Yeah, we'll do the quiz answers.
We'll have to do it at the end because I'll get it up eventually.
So if anybody is watching purely for the answers, I do apologise. Come back at 8 o'clock. It's be on record anyway.
Definitely. So yeah, this episode we gave you a bit of a warning last week's episode that it'd be on a sensitive topic, which is death, grief, and the afterlife. I know a lot of people might not feel that comfortable, and I really encourage you to
stick with it, please.
Minister self-care. If you can't watch it, we understand.
Yeah.
If you know, we feel like you might get something out of it, then please stick with us. And
it's not going to be more.
No, yeah, definitely. I mean, I think a really good way of starting this is what is your relationship with death?
I can't wait. I
thought you meant I can't wait to talk about this, but then you just stopped and you were like, oh, she can't wait for death.
I keep finding myself staring at the night sky and all the stars, like, I'm so excited to like finding out what actually happens.
So there's some contrast because I am terrified.
Because I've got to that point of I'm not scared of death itself, my brain is now like thinking about how I'm going to die. And I'm like, ooh, pain, ooh, like, I just want to slip away in the night. That's my dream. But when I'm old, just in case it's going to say tonight.
Said you're saying be specific with your manifestations.
Yeah. Well and truly old and ready. I don't know if you'll ever be ready, but I think that's part of it, isn't it? Just accepting. You're never going to feel like, right, over and out.
And I feel like there's something about the way the Western culture, Western way of dealing and accepting death is very different to maybe some places in the other places in the world, is what I'm trying to say. I'll put the roof of my mouth back in. So yeah, how it's celebrated, literally celebrated across the world.
I want to say Day of the Dead, but I'm not sure if that's even the right term, because I know that across Mexico, and then we've been doing about it at school, all the different Halloween themes and how everywhere across the world celebrates around this time that the veil is thin. And
yeah, that is the Dia de los Muertos, so the Day of the Dead.
Yeah. I think that is fabulous because we as a culture are very like, ooh, it's a dirty secret and nobody talk about it and be terrified of it.
Definitely. I asked my mum before coming onto this, I was like, is there anything that, after experiencing losing both her parents, that you wish you knew before going into it, or something that surprised you about, experiencing grief or death of a loved one? And she said that it's just something that you cannot really prepare for. It's just something that hits you. Some people will feel like they can't say the right thing. Some people will say that they're, will just say too much and you're like, okay, I've seen you enough now. But she said the one thing that stuck out is there's always a moment that she's noticed, and that is with humour. So what happened with her is at her mum's funeral, my nanny had told everyone that she was a certain age her whole life. And then when it came to reading out her obituary, they said, Patricia Bolton, born the year that she was born. And 3 women behind my mum just went, she told us she was 60. And the whole room just erupted. Apparently it was so funny and it just broke that. And she was like, it's moments like that. I need... people need humor. It's a really good way of healing.
This for me is why that beautiful word that you said, Day of the Dead, is such a wicked thing, because they are celebrating their past, their ancestors that have passed and people that their loved ones that have died. They're not kind of beaten of, like, there's a dedicated time to come together and be really open about it. And I think that's a huge part of, like you say, the healing. Like, there's a lot of grieving that's done in a really lonely place because it's awkward. Don't talk about it,
It's a very British Western way, isn't it? To like, oh, don't pry into their thing and don't ask them too many questions.
Yeah, don't cry, And at the end of the day, you're not even allowed to pop a joke, like you say, but popping a joke's usually the best thing to do.
Definitely. I know there's a really good clip by Joey Diaz. He's a great comedian that he says, he's the friend that he's talking to another comedian. He says, Tom Segura, if you'd called me and you say my dad's dead, I say, right, all right, what we getting out the will? He's straight into like a joke, what we getting out this arsehole? And it's just, to some people, you're like, thank you.
Yeah.
I've been getting so many like, oh, I'm sorry about your mum. I'm sorry about, just having that one person to clear that dead energy out the room. Sorry for the bad pun, but it's a heavy feeling.
I mean, even that's the thing, isn't it? The wake, quite often, wakes are like madness purely because everybody gets steaming.
You've probably not seen all these family members for years.
Or it's like, a really somber affair where everybody's and all that. But it's like, and the other thing is when you're at a funeral and you hear what's read out, in the thing.
Yeah.
I'm often sat there thinking, I wish I'd known this about this person when they were alive. We ought to just be more celebratory of people in general. I think if we were celebrating our past ones from childhood, you'd perhaps have a better appreciation of people and life.
No, definitely.
Anyway.
My mum said, because I asked her also if she had any advice for anyone that was, going through something. She said, allow yourself that time to grieve. Of course, that's necessary. But try not to let it ruin your life completely take you over, because that's not what that loved one would want for you. And so if you've got this fear of losing someone you love so much, make that time with them count. This is the time, I'm terrible for it. Text that person back. Get in contact with that person, see that person, because it will be a lot easier to reflect on the good times than have that guilt of, oh, I didn't contact them enough. I'm guilty of not messaging my mum enough and stuff like that. And I know that will kill me if I don't change that.
Anyway, I think, that's something to remember in the grieving process. I'm not going to go into it, but I'm just remembering loads of really random things that I remembered when my grandma had first passed on, where I'd be like, oh my God, I did this and I did that. And it's like, you're going to feel guilty about so much anyway during the grieving process. So I think that's something that you can impart, is prepare to go through, to be patient with yourself and be kind and try to focus on the positives and try to look at the good outcomes. Now, talking about this and grief, we've got to remember that sometimes grief isn't for an elderly relative that's passed away. Sometimes it's for a baby, a child, somebody that's taken their own life. And it can,
It can also be for someone who's still here. If someone's got dementia, Asperger's.
Yeah.
Oh my God, no. Autism, you're fine. So what I'm thinking of?
Alzheimer's.
Yeah. Those words are too close.
Yeah. So that kind of, when we're thinking about grief where it's just been thrust upon you when it's a child, that's where we're going to be talking about mediumship, the afterlife, those more spiritual, or turn into faith as a way of healing.
Was that only for younger?
No, I just wanted to make it clear that when we're talking about grief, we were just talking like an elderly relative.
Oh, no,
and
right,
somebody might be watching it thinking, well, my child passed away, so I can't think like that.
No, I'm literally interested.
Just bringing it in. But
okay, I like that.
Yeah, so it's like, when we're talking about the healing, we're not just going to be kind of coming from that point of view that they were old anyway.
It's a bit naive to think that everyone dies is 100 and lived a great life and we're ready to go.
Yeah, but that's basically it. And that's what the hardest thing I think can be, is when you feel like there was unfinished stories.
Yeah. I've written way too much here and I'm not going to be able to do it. But one thing that I wanted to touch on quickly is the fear of death is a universal and deeply human experience. So there's no one, I'm assuming there's no one watching this that is 100% okay with death, unless you are right at the end of your, terminal illness, unfortunately, and you've, come to that understanding. And then if you've been brought to that horrible point through depression, if many people lose their lives to suicide, and it's heartbreaking because of how often do you hear someone say, oh, I never would have expected it. They were fine. I saw them on Monday and they were so happy. um, to understand that someone could alleviate their fear of death just because in that moment they feel like the world's better off without them. That worries me as like a whole new separate thing all on its own.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that we kind of are aware of is that with anxiety, with neurodivergent individuals, they're much more likely to suffer with anxiety. And then within anxiety, you have specific health anxiety, lying awake at night, worrying about your loved ones dying or yourself dying or whatever it is. And that's why we wanted to discuss it. A, so you know you're not alone, because we have these fears as well. B, so it's not this dirty little secret and it's not the elephant in the room. It's like the minute you can bring things and start discussing them openly, they lose their fear anyway.
I think even discussing like what that person would like for their funeral. I think a lot of people experience, you know, I don't really want to bring this up to them. It's like, well, they're probably not going to bring it up with them themselves because they don't want to put that on you. It's a touchy time, but I think it's a really good link to ADHD because a lot of people with ADHD struggle with that lack of control. With autism as well, that need to control to make life what they need around them. Do you know what I mean? You know how to set up your environment so that you can thrive. And that idea of, oh, but then what? That lack of, so there's the making the most of people when they're here. Also, the afterlife. I feel like having an idea of what's after, or not necessarily. And there's many people that believe it's just the same as before you were born. Lights out, you're not here. But I think that would be a small minority of people that believe that. What do you believe?
Well, I believe in reincarnation, and I also believe in the spirit world. What I sometimes struggle to understand is how those two things kind of fit together, because I'm like, are you in the spirit world floating around for a bit until you're reincarnated? So I still have questions. I don't necessarily have a solid understand, like a solid kind of narrative of this is how it works, but I do have a firm belief that there's more. And that's because I watch a lot of YouTube videos, like the Netflix documentary. I don't know if you've heard of it, Surviving Death. It covers after-death experiences, people that receive messages from loved ones. It talks to mediums. And I just think there's too much evidence to ignore the suggestion that there is more, kind of thing, that there is something more.
I think it's an interesting take because as training as a counsellor, you'd be told, people have these varying beliefs and religions and things that make them think, things that they believe. And it can be a little bit dangerous at some points, allowing a person to fully, if they're like, if I had a client come into me regularly, like, oh, I'm seeing my mum, I keep seeing my mum keeps, there is a certain point where the average counsellor, psychotherapist, doctor will start to think this is hallucinations, this isn't a good thing, this is bad for them. But how do we understand that?
Well, this is the thing. I was just thinking about that. Obviously, I work with young people, and one thing that I bring up with them is their sixth senses, because they've all got them. It's bizarre. So I don't know if it's just a neurodivergency thing, more common in neurodivergency, but them having like vivid dreams or memories that don't belong to them, those kind of like experiences, or they'll say they can see ghosts. They see ghosts in their room. Like you say, they don't share this stuff because they're worried they're going to be labelled as crazy. They've already been labelled as ADHD and autistic. So they're not going to then start going, oh, I talked to this person that comes and visits me now and again. But actually that could be their spirit guide and they've got a genuine connection. But you've got to foster these conversations within families and within schools from birth so that they're more normalized.
Definitely.
And this is why we're putting it out there, because I want people to be like, yeah, I have these premonitions, or I have these vivid dreams, or I have these beliefs. Let's start those conversations.
Definitely. I'm from the place where I've got no idea. I love the idea of reincarnation. And through watching, again, one of the episodes from that, what you just mentioned, there's a DMT experience that's understood. And that to me has science backing. I can understand that. And then it similarly lines up with people that take DMT and also have had near-death experiences where they've died and come back to life. They experience the exact same thing. Their accounts are exactly the same. And there's no way all these people have just it's insane.
Yeah, it's not a coincidence. too coincidence.
Yeah, I'm a strong believer that the DMT, I would like to understand, or I'd like to believe, and I think if my struggling with fully subscribing to it is what gives me the fear. If I could subscribe, then I'd feel like I'd lose the fear. Oh, what was I saying?
Are you going to say about that you're worried about DMT, that if you took DMT, used it up?
Oh, no, no.
It's just a hallucination. Do you believe in another realm? Do you believe that realm exists?
I didn't until this video that we've just edited.
It's in these things.
Yeah.
Remember, we released the podcast because you're coming from a scientific. You've got to think, before we did all this and, like, you know, discussing well-being so openly, you finding science and structure with therapy was your way of finding
Controls.
Yeah,
I understand this. This is a framework I get.
Yeah. So now you're coming out of that comfort zone again. You know, you're allowing yourself to think, you allowed yourself to come on a ghost hunt, and now you've allowed yourself to question whether that other realm exists. Scientifically, it might not match up with what you've in the past looked at, but that's okay as well.
Because all I had to go on in the past is people's stories, and people that I'd be like, well, I don't think, why would they lie about that? Especially people like my mum that like, she's got no reason to lie about anything. And it just, experiencing stuff for myself that I cannot explain. That music note.
That music is bizarre.
I can't, because I understand there's music that's being played over that I've put on there. But those notes, I can show you I've got the video that I sent you, and I was like, look, this is the original file. I haven't done anything to this. Because I was at the point where I was like, did someone play music? Please tell me, because I want to know. Do you know what I mean? I want to know if there is actually a ghost. Who, like, I can't explain it. Why did music start playing for 3 notes?
The weirdest thing about that, one thing Pat mentioned about us sending it to Kyle and seeing if he can take just that sound so we could hear it clearer.
Yeah, if you could manipulate it and literally, that would be amazing.
So that's one thing. And then the other thing is, it's because I've showed the kids at school, and a few of them were like, it sounds electronic, it sounds like a kid's toy, blah, blah, blah. So it's like that. And for me, it sounds like the house phone at my granddad and grandma's house. And I could go there and ring it and get that on recording, you know, so that we can see if it sounds like that.
Yeah, do it.
And what I'm sure one of the students actually said, it sounds like an old-fashioned telephone. And I was like, oh my God, don't, because that's what I think it is. Like, and it's just as I say, I joke, I've not spoken to my grandma in a while, as it says it, like, as it does it, sorry.
I hear, and again, it's so annoying that I hear this because it almost sounds like I wouldn't be saying this if I'd taken it straight off of it. It sounds like the first few notes of the Halloween theme, like the Michael Myers film. Or is it Freddy? It's one of the two. That's what I mean. I'm not a horror film watcher. I wouldn't know really which one this came from. But it sounds like the first few notes of one of them, some scary song, and I just don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
It'd be great if we can get Kat/Kyle to manipulate it for us and see if we can get it a bit clearer.
Uncover it.
It's interesting. But this is the thing. Since I've been using my pendulum to like contact spirit world and stuff like that, that's when my fear of death and anxiety around it really has lifted. But not just that, even as my understanding of the spirit realm has grown, my grieving for my lost sister and for my grandma is completely changed into something else. It's like I know they're here with me now. I understand. I can communicate with them. I use my pendulum to communicate with them. And that for me has brought me a huge amount of peace and healing. I've been able to grow in a way that I hadn't been able to for many, many years because I was kind of locked in that final stages of grief, which was loss and missing them. I don't miss them anymore because I feel like they're with me.
That was a really strong statement to say.
Yeah,
I feel like a previous you would have struggled to have just said that sentence.
Honest to God, like I feel like my little sister in particular was born so we could meet her, and she's one of the very strong guides, prominent guides on my family's team, as it were. And we were very blessed to have met her as a person. Yeah, you know, and she's back on that team now guiding, and we've had so many signs from Win over the years. But the thing that I struggle with is I would never say this to somebody else that was in that grieving process or whatever, or even directly to other people that have got their own grief around Winnie and my grandma, because that's their, like, it's, to them it might come across as insensitive or that I'm insane, or, you know, people react in funny ways. And I think that's why we've kind of got to normalize it on the whole, so that people can have those conversations.
Not keep striking this off as psychosis instantly.
Yeah, basic. Yeah. I mean, sometimes the way that my spirituality, it almost crosses over into schizophrenia symptoms, like as in what they read as. And you just think, like, you know, it's scary, because when you're spiritual, you can see where the witch hunt stuff came from. I'm always joking to my kids, like at school, I'd have been, you know, I would have been one of those on the trials, the witch trials. And I was, if my pendulum and my spirituality and my investigation is to be believed.
You've already asked it.
I asked it if I was a witch in my past life, and it was like, yeah. And then I was like, more than once, and it was like, yeah. So, and I was around during those witch trials, but I feel like that's where all my sixth senses, they keep coming through with each life or whatever. The quicker I can recognize them, the better.
See, my understanding of the witch trials is that there were no witches, and that it was just a way of punishing women. But then again, I'm putting on this logical, don't get away with the fairies kind of, and it's not always practical.
Magic. They were healers. They were herbalists. You know, using they knew what to go and fetch out of the woods to cure different things. So some of these women that were put on trial were really highly regarded by the village until they shunned a guy that decided that put her moves on her or something and accidentally upset the wrong person. Then they could say she's a witch.
Yeah.
Because she managed to heal my wife's this, that, and the other, so she must be a witch. And then they'd put them through. But there was all sorts of things, like there was witch trials for like women that had deformed babies. She must be a witch because her baby's deformed.
Yeah.
You know, and then both the child and the woman would be put on trial. There was, you know, it like you said, it was almost used to persecute.
Exactly. It was
even
used
a woman for being ugly if she had a deformity herself or a big mole. Stuff like that were then put on the witch trial. So,
and you can see bringing forward to like the Victorian era, where like there was on the first DSM, there's a disorder called hysteria, and we've heard it used many times, and it normally gets projected onto women. Oh, you're hysterical. And it was any woman that did not abide by the patriarchal role to be, you know, if there was women that were going through menopause, that were experiencing anxiety, that were like, actually, I'd like to vote.
Domestic violence.
Well, I don't like it when you hit me. Hysterical.
Yeah, what was happening? The thing is, with this historical persecution of women, we're now afraid, even more afraid to be different, because there's this collective social understanding that that's not how females behave.
It's stopping females. I hate saying that. It stops women and girls being diagnosed correctly with ADHD, autism, all these things that they are taught to mask. To mask during early age.
Constantly being told off for, you know, it'd get the better of me, and I'd jump up and it'd be, you're an attention seeker or whatever, and it's like, God, I didn't even think about that action. Never mind to garner attention. I was just reacting to the music or reacting or whatever. But
if we live in a world where it's hard to bring up a topic like death, you know, when you talk about, we were talking about this on the way to Flamingo AF, if you felt like the need to just dance in the street because you were happy, people would look at you like you were nuts, like you'd lost your mind. But why?
That's just happiness. Yeah, I do dance in the streets when I'm happy, and I do get looked at like, you know, it's like, say, people get angry almost. It's
and
like,
that in itself is like a great, like, the epitome, if you like, of with all of life, like not letting people be their true, authentic selves out of fear of other people.
The ironic thing is, all these people striving to control this and to know this and all the rest of it, the only thing we know is we're going to die. And it's the only thing that we're like, oh no, don't talk about it. But it's almost like that's the one thing we can plan for. If you want to control anything, you can control your send-off.
Okay. Oh no, I'm interested. I want to know what you want for a funeral now. That's so interesting.
Me, I don't want anybody to feel any pressure. So when I'm gone, I'm gone. I'll be like, have a big old party, put up some banging pictures of me, you know, but I wouldn't want anyone to feel like they had to do anything, to take time off work, to attend a grave. Honest to God, when I think about it, I'm like, I actually don't really want, there's nothing I'd want, if you see what I mean.
My mum says exactly the same
when
thing.
I was younger, I used to say, this is when it's probably in one of my diaries somewhere,
Want to hear it?
that I used to want to be cremated, then rolled up in a big split and passed around my friends. And I used to want, and I used to want my funeral, my wake in a club with podiums. And I was like, I wanted 2 glow sticks on one of the podiums. I must have written this down because I feel like I'm seeing the plan. And yeah, the 2 glow sticks that were going to be on the pendulum, I was like, when you've smoked me, you'll see the glow sticks have one final dance. But when I reflect on things and when I've read my past diaries, I knew way more in my teens and as a kid than I did. I'm only just refinding the knowledges and things. I'm like, it genuinely did get put to the back. Like, I must have been told so much that's not real, or don't say that, or whatever.
I think it's really interesting.
I'm just refinding it all now. Like, back then, I knew that I would be hanging around just to have my final goodbyes to everyone. Then I'd be off to my new life or whatever, and I'd have one final dance.
My mum said that if I buried her, she'd come back and haunt me.
Yeah.
So to just cremate her and don't put no graveside, don't go and take any more of your life worrying about me. But I've told her she's going to be made into a sapphire or some sort of diamond and she'll be in a ring. It's pretty expensive, so I hope she leaves me some money for it.
I used to want to leave my body to medical science purely just because I used to think it was a nice thing to do if it was going to help. But then I've heard from a medical student that when they get bodies and that, they do funny things with them sometimes, like take them out on a night out, see how long they can get away with it, like they'll dress it up.
Oh my God, Weekend at Bernie's, just some sunglasses on.
Never right, they're just drunk. Really, someone's donated body, like.
I kind of want to do that now, but not with a real body, just like a mannequin or something.
Get away with it. Does somebody want to donate us their dead body and we'll take it on a night out?
So funny. This is Clive. It's my boyfriend. What do you mean we can't get in?
But then the medical science thing, I started rethinking it because I thought, what if you do need your body for the afterlife and then I've gave away all my parts?
But to be fair, yeah, I've donated all my organs and everything, apart from my eyes and my skin. My skin, I'm just doing someone a favour here. You don't want my skin. Like, no skin graft should ever be made from my skin. You could, I mean, I guess they could study it, but it's just best just being left on me. And the other one is my eyes, because the idea of not having them in an afterlife scares me. See, that's what I mean. I don't know what to believe, but just in case I need my eyes, which makes...
It's funny how, like you say, I bet if we, oh my God, we should pose the question of, do you believe in the afterlife type thing? And them say, like, most people would probably say no, but then be like, would you leave your organs? Because then people have got views about that,
Definitely.
regardless of whether they've got a view about the afterlife. People often have quite a strong view of what they want to happen to their organs.
Definitely.
See what I mean?
I know Frank Sinatra, in his will, he wrote that in his coffin to be buried with him, he wanted a bottle of Jack Daniels, something else, I think a cigarette, and change something like a quarter or something to be able to call home if there is an afterlife. In his mind, there's a call box in heaven, and that he could use it. But it takes me back to something I'm sure you can divulge into much better, is the Egyptians' way of dealing with death.
Yeah.
They took everything with them, these pharaohs, like their slaves would climb in with them thinking that they were going to get, like literally, they'd be like, yeah, I love this guy, he served me for 20 years, and they'd be like, well, I've got to get, and they'd just get in, like, ready for the afterlife, because they weren't bothered about this life.
Yeah, this was just, it was a test though. So again, one of the other things that I do use with the students is the afterlife in terms of the judgment day. Karma will judge you, because that comes from the Egyptians thing.
Okay.
The hall of I can't remember how many it is, but it's like in the 40s. There's like it's one of those pictures, and it's like the thingy of judgment, and they'll get judged by them for all their life, and then it'll all get weighed up, because obviously everyone is good and bad. It's not you've got to be good all the time.
Oh yeah, I remember you explaining this to me.
Yeah, and then your heart is weighed against a feather, and if it outweighs the feather, then they crush it. Your soul's crushed. And sometimes I'll say to the students, say if they come in and they've had like a really unjust situation where somebody's bullying them, and there's no thing to say to make it right, because you do want to go and punch the bully in the face or whatever, and you just have to say,
let's not do that.
Yeah, but you just have to say, their soul will be judged, you know. And for me,
Like
even having that faith allows me to walk away from situations and think that's not my issue. You're acting like that, but I'm going to respond like this because my soul's going to be judged, and your soul can be judged for that, and I'll be judged for
100%.
how I respond, you know. So I do think faith in something has got a lot to answer to. And
Yeah, definitely. And again, that carries on into Christianity, into Islam. There's this a very, I think, oh no, I believe that might only be Jews that don't have hell. They have like a similar place, but it's nowhere near the hell that you're taught is here in through Christianity and Islam. I always explain, like, you've got Judaism, and then like the director's cut is Christianity, and then like the bonus, like fully comprehensive with commentary is Islam, because it very much builds on the same thing with the same. But I know the Islamic idea of hell is it's a hard one to deal with. But we're not talking about hell. We're not talking about
the concept of heaven and hell. For me, sometimes I think we're already here, and how we.
Amen. Can't spell tail.
Well, you might be, and I was just going to say, the world, this life, has the capacity to be heaven or hell, depending on how you think about it and how you, the seeds that you water, I suppose.
Definitely.
Because if you want to have a heaven, you know, there was one point when I was in Tenerife and was on the beach, and I said to Lee something about, look, we are in heaven right now. What is not heavenly about this? You know, the sun's shining, I can hear the sea, I've got ice cream in my hand. Literally, I couldn't feel any happier. So this must be heaven. But I've also been in hell on this earth. So, you know, like sometimes I feel like that there's so much symbolism in religion where it's almost smoke and mirrors, that I'm like, heaven and hell is already here. And what we create here will be what we go to next, type thing.
And that goes into the more Buddhist way of looking at reincarnation.
Hinduism, I suppose, with the reincarnation vibes. But even the reincarnation stuff, I'm not just basing this on, I just believe this. There's so many stories out there. The most amazing one that I saw recently was this little boy who was about 5 years old, and his mum was driving him home from school, and he just announced, how kids do, I really liked it when mum used to take me to the park. And she went, you mean when I used to take you to the park? And he went, no, my other mum, the one with the pretty hair. And she immediately was like, went cold, like, what? Like, what does he mean? So, and then I don't know what happened next, but basically he ended up coming out with, my name used to be, and he said the full name, it was like Jalen Thompson or Jalen something or other. My name used to be Jalen Thompson. My mum was called, whatever the name was, it was like Waterfield or something like that. My mum was called Washington. And I was killed. And he's 5 years old coming out of all this stuff. But so she, out of interest, Googled it. And he was born in 2015, but in 2007, this little boy, Jalen Thompson or whatever the full name was that he'd gave, had been murdered at 18 months old. And the mum was called Sandra Washington or whatever her name was, Washington. So she was like, I didn't know what to do with this information. Like, what do you do when your 5-year-old has said that to you? Like,
I remember seeing another, I don't know if it was the same one.
There's loads of them, but this guy investigates them. So he went in, there's not only so much investigation you can do morally and all that, but he showed this little boy photos of random places and places that were Jalen's home, Jalen's well-visited places and his family members, and he managed to pick every single correct photo.
Wow.
I mean, that for me is the evidence. Like,
oh yeah,
you
definitely.
know, there's so much. I know it doesn't match up to a scientific measurement, but that is the evidence. All of these kind of.
How do you explain it? Yeah, definitely.
And there's loads, especially in children, because they've not forgot yet.
There's I don't know if it's the same guy that investigates them, but I remember seeing one where it was a young lad, and he has memories of World War II fighting as a pilot,
yeah.
And as he's young, they're very young, he's given all this detail, and as he gets older, I think he was about 13 at the point that it was being made, and they're asking him, and he's going, I really don't know. But there's people that knew this person that look at him and they're like, you look just like him, you're exactly him, and they have such a and he's got to the age where he's like, it kind of creeps me out now.
Yeah,
because he's like, I don't remember it anymore, but people look at me like, my son, my this, and it's a lot for him, and it's just. Yeah.
Yes, much. I mean, with reincarnation, one of the things that they say is if you've got like with Kat and her obsession with all things Korean, and a natural ability for that language to be able to pick it up and like know when she's hearing it. And then her daughter, who's now got this natural, and like she's 6 or whatever, and was writing Russian just because she'd looked at a video. She not writing her own alphabet at school, but writing the full Russian alphabet. They're signs,
Has more letters, by the way.
they're signs that you could have a past life connection to those places. So
Very cool.
it's well worth kind of, for me, I think this thing, Curiosity Killed the Cat, was designed to stop us asking questions, and I think be curious.
That's
curious.
not the full sense saying, is it?
Oh, you did say this to me.
Let me find it.
Is it another corruption? It'll be like Curiosity Killed the Cat, but
It is a but.
But we recommend that you are curious. Yeah, but a cat has 9 lives. That's what it will say. But lives are there to be lived.
But satisfaction brought it back. Curiosity killed the cat, but satisfaction brought it back.
So
that is the full
curiosity, and then you'll carry on living. It's beautiful. The reincarnation is right. It's telling you, look,
it's right there.
Curiosity will kill the cat, but satisfaction will bring you back. So if you live a contentful life, you'll reincarnate, and your curiosity will keep you alive.
There's one thing to take away from this podcast. That's it.
Yeah, curiosity.
100%. So I've got a few different ways of way they. So we know about the Mexican Dia de los Muertos, the Day of the Dead. It's a.
You're all here having a great time. What? All around.
Buenos noches. Because good night. Oh wait, yeah. Good. Do you only say that when you're going? No, you don't just say that when you're leaving, do you? No, I know bon night is Portuguese, but I think you only. I don't know, no idea. But anyway, it is a vibrant and colourful Mexican holiday celebrated on November 1st and 2nd.
Big holographic sugar skull. It's in the car.
Actually, behind it, I have something I painted when I was like 13.
But I just loved it. Anyway, I didn't click it was for this link. I thought maybe it's just an addition. Yeah, a little bit.
The other one down and
yeah,
another bit of artwork. And that kind of works. So it's a time to honour and remember deceased loved ones, and families create offenders, which is known as altars, and they're adorned with offerings like sugar skulls, marigolds, and favourite foods of the deceased. Like you've seen these Day of the Dead, you know, I'm sure you've seen many people dressed up like it, but this is the origin. And the belief is that Dia de los Muertos, the spirits of the departed return during these times to join the living and are celebrating with them. So it's not just you're having a wake remembering them, this idea that they are there. This veil between the living and the dead is so thin right now that we're all here together.
Yeah, it's the best day to do rituals and things.
100%. And it keeps these people alive. It keeps their memory alive, which, like you said, you're not too fussed about having anyone take that much time out of their day once you've gone. But does this not like?
Well, it's more about what they want to do, and like I don't want to put pressure on anybody to have. Like if this was something that was, you know, I'd be well involved doing this anyway. So when I'm gone, I know I'm going to be a part of that because I know everyone's 100%. Doing it. You know, that'd be great because then you would take away. Let's just do that once a year. You know, then there's no guilt because you've not visited the grave.
Yeah, I'm happy not having a grave. That definitely doesn't need to happen. But I feel like I'm more okay with death at the idea that once a year, like I'll still have a birthday or something like that, a day when people remember me and and if there's any chance that I can get back and chill with them too and have fun with, if that is even a slight possibility, like get me there.
Can I just say, when I was younger, I used to read or hear about tribes that would ask their ancestors for the answers. And I remember even back then when I was really young thinking, well, that makes sense because I bet you ask them and then the spirits or it's in your genes, your DNA. So you ask and then you fall asleep and then your brain will tell you the answer for the morning. So that's how I made sense of it. But now I'm like, yeah, like it. You know, you talk about, well, ask your ancestors. That's because they're there waiting for you to ask them.
100%.
Literally ask for those signs. Are you there? Somebody show me you there.
Another thing that people do in Tibet is a sky burial. So in Tibetan Buddhism, the body is considered an empty vessel once the soul has departed. And as a result, there are unique approaches to disposal of the deceased. So sky burials involve placing the body on a mountaintop to be exposed to the elements and scavenging birds, such as vultures. And this is seen as an act of generosity, providing sustenance to wildlife. It is believed that this method facilitates the soul's journey to the afterlife.
Interesting.
Isn't that strange? We
put me out for the foxes.
Yeah, the westernized way of, getting this box, bury with the box, down into the thing, or we send you into the fire. It's all just very closed. And of this idea of just leaving someone on a mountaintop.
Well, I think
it's very different, isn't it?
It's because they've accepted there is a soul, and once the soul's gone, the body's no longer needed. In our culture, they won't even admit that there's a soul. So it's very much when you die, you're gone.
Yeah.
So that's why we like hold on to the physical body, because it's like there isn't so much openness for the fact that their soul has now joined the energy around us type thing, and they're here still.
Definitely. I feel like in the Western society, we've only just understood that, burying someone near a tree or scattering their ashes near a tree literally provides these trees and all these nature with like carbon that it needs if it's cremation or the worm food, basically. It's all, and it will go into that tree, and that tree will have like parts of your loved one. I just think it's beautiful, and this idea of the body is a vessel. It is not the whole person.
I've noticed 2 natural burial grounds pop up around, kind of like when I'm driving to work kind of area. So I like the idea of that, because that's the same. You're buried in a casket that will disintegrate, and the worms will eat you.
Kind of like that too. The last one we'll cover, I think it's quite cool.
Ghanaian one. Yeah, yes. I just read ahead and I thought I'm going to shout that out anyway, because
do you know much about it? Feel free to take.
No, not at all. I was just I'm pretty sure Lee's grandma's Ghanaian, so.
Wow, very cool. Maybe Lee understands a bit more than us. So, I think in parts of Ghana, notably in the Ga people, I think I'm pronouncing that right, there's a tradition of creating elaborate fantasy coffins. So these coffins are often crafted in unique shapes that represent the deceased person's profession or interests. For instance, a fish-shaped... Yours will be a pendulum, just in a nice... A bus. What would mine be? Oh.
A microphone.
I don't want anything to do with audio. Oh God, yeah. But I'll be a YouTube 100,000 followers plaque. I'll take that. That'll be my coffin shape. So, for instance, a fish-shaped coffin may be used for a fisherman, or a car-shaped coffin for a. And I'm pretty sure these the ones the Ghanaian wedding funerals where they're like dancing with the coffins.
Hello.
I can't. There's a place in the world where they like rave with this. I can't. I'd have to find the meme, but it just looks so happy. They're just like dancing with this rather than the solemn like.
I suppose
we normally have.
It's the idea that perspective is everything, isn't it? So your perspective on death and all of that is then, going to heavily influence how you view it and how you act at a funeral and all the rest of it.
Definitely. So we're getting towards the end. So I feel like we should leave with some tips for dealing with the fear of death. I've made up a few, and I feel like we've hardly touched on any of this subject, so we can like easily come back to this at a later date. The first one is allow yourself to grieve. Understand that grief is a natural and necessary process. It's okay to feel sadness, anger, or confusion. Give yourself permission to grieve without judgment. And the stages of grief are commonly talked about. It's like one of the most common parts of psychology that we understand. And I'll put you over to the React cam so you can see.
I think it's useful and handy anyway, because these stages of grief do apply to other things.
100%.
Losing anything.
And understanding that this process is not linear. You can do this and then go back, and do this and go back, and do this and go all the way back still. It is not linear. But eventually, allowing yourself the time and the compassion, you can reach acceptance. If you feel you are struggling and staying in these areas too often, you're bouncing back and forth, please talk to someone. Whether it's a friend, whether it's a professional, you deserve a better life than to be stuck in these areas, which can be hard to navigate.
There's a lot of services as well where online now where you can text, where you can chat like on an instant chat, which I feel like the anonymous, I don't know how to say it. But that, yeah, that is helps people go to those sometimes. And even there's like a bot app called Wobot, and if you tell it your woes, it talks back and it like gives you tips and things. So I think that's quite a nice soundboard if you don't feel comfortable going to somebody else.
Definitely. Just reach out to something or someone that you can get help from. And that leads to the second bit of advice, and that is to seek support. Don't go through it alone. Reach out to friends, family, support group. Yeah. And professional help was the last one. So,
and the other thing is finding that faith. Be curious. Don't be afraid to look at alternatives. You know, people are so like, oh, I don't believe in ghosts and stuff like that, and it might put you off. But keep going especially if you've got that gut instinct that there's something more. And kind of just make the point as well that losing a pet is just as traumatic, and it's just as valid to go through that grieving process when it comes to animals and things as well, because that's a conversation I've been having in friendship groups recently. And I think people shun it. You know, I think people that lose pets are often left in a really lonely place because they feel like people are going to judge them.
It's not as big a deal, or they'll feel silly for even admitting it. Yeah.
Well, and the fact that it's hard, so it can be 6 months down the line and they're still missing an animal, and people are going, "Oh, just get another one."
Yeah,
and that can make them feel really upset. Where it's like, I'm really struggling here, but they don't know how to open up because they feel like people are going to laugh.
It's hard because at some point, you can understand like a person you can argue with. I think my favorite, Ethan Klein from the H3 said it best: "So children and pets are like out away from sin. There is no sin to them. They haven't had a chance to or even live a life that could make them make bad decisions or be a bad person. It's a pet. It never had this, or a young person. Joy. Yeah, exactly. And it never. I don't know. It must be very hard to get over. For some people, support animals are a huge thing. No.
It was sent unless that's not.
Dead air.
So this was just because I just wanted to share the answers to the quiz. Because the thing is, just because only a few people sent them back doesn't mean people aren't waiting for the answers. We had a lot of downloads of the actual quiz. Shall I just send it forward again, or shall I put it up as a separate video on social media?
Oh, I'll tell you what, we could just put it onto social media, put it in the stories, then highlights if anyone needs to cross-reference it.
Yeah.
And so next week, I realised we didn't end that at all. This is the most ADHD episode, as always. We didn't do the compassion box this week, so we'll move that to next week. It'll give you a chance to get yours together if you haven't. So what is a compassion box? A box of something that you can go and help yourself self-soothe with. So fill it with things that give you that sense of gratitude, happiness, appreciation. It can be pictures, it can be a CD, it can be a digital file, it could be a link to something, a web page that helps you, it could be your favorite bar of chocolate, it could be a teddy bear, something that smells nice. All these things that you can just hide away on your own with this little box and just take 10 deep breaths and just get yourself back into a happy, self-compassionate spot. People with ADHD, I know you struggle to self-soothe in a correct way. So instead of alcohol, drugs, all these different things, I encourage you by next week to have your compassion box, and I will have mine as well.
And the other thing that I was going to put to you that we have a conversation about is adjustments that could reasonably made at work when somebody's got ADHD. So like things you can ask your boss or could ask your boss for, or if there's bosses watching, things that they could do, but also kind of like things to be aware of in the workplace. Because we was asked to do an awareness video, and I've messaged the.
Oh yeah, I remember. I was like, where are you going with this?
Yeah. Sorry, I've not got around to doing something specifically, but we'll have the conversation, and then that can be used as for people in a workplace, if they need to bring it to an employer, they can say, "Oh, watch this podcast," and it'll explain it better than I can, or well, and it will explain it. Full stop.
So next week, Compassion Boxes, we'll be talking about employability and the employer's helpfulness role that you can play in the employees ADHD and
because and I went because my employers couldn't meet my needs, so I'm probably not the best to be giving advice. I'll be like, get out while you still can.
In itself, yeah, exactly. I know exactly what you mean. But yeah, and then also we'll announce the giveaway next week. I don't know if we'll do it on social media or on.
I know who's wanting to contact you guys, so.
You go.
Yes.
There you go. So, yeah, I feel like we've addressed grief and death in the most ADHD way possible with no real structure, just waddling on through it with multiple different, avenues of thought. But I like it, and I feel like it's a good starter for our journey into the afterlife when we want to go to a spiritualist church and
we are going to go to spiritual church, and I'd like to think that these conversations just scatter little seeds of curiosity amongst people's minds where we're not going on too much about each area, but then if something about one of those areas triggers a little bit of like, I like the sound of that, they can go on and do that specific kind of research in that.
I'm going to assume if we're finding it interesting, then a lot of you will too. So we'll see you next week. Thank you very much for joining us this week. If you haven't watched the Halloween episode already, go and watch it now.
Yeah,
give us a like, give us a subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll see you next week.
Yes. Good night.
This is Lindsay.
And this is Steph.
We are A Different Human Design.
And this is a different podcast.
Ciao.
Good night.
Why is it like this? Instead of hate, it should be love, me inviting. You don't agree, then you're the problem that we're fighting. Open up your mind, stand up, become righteous. Why is it like this? Instead of hate,